These are some of the worst ways people have died in the ocean. And first up is none other than the Byford dolphin disaster. Okay guys, picture this. It's November 5th, 1983, and 5 people basically explode deep underwater and left one with severe injuries. Yeah, you cannot make this goddamn stuff up. So it's the 1980s and diving technology is getting more advanced. And the North Sea is a hotspot for oil exploration. You know, oil. The reason gas prices go up every time someone sneezes in the Middle East. Anyways, the North Sea was full of oil rigs, and to get that sweet, sweet freedom juice, people had to dive deep. Like, really deep. Enter in the Byford Dolphin, an oil rig with a special tool, a diving system that allowed divers to go way down, gather information, or fix stuff that was broken. Simple enough, right? Now, if you've been watching this channel long enough, you know it's not that simple. By the way, subscribe. Now, the problem with deep sea diving is the pressure. We're talking about crazy, crushing pressure that would literally turn you into a human pancake if you were, well, not in a sealed system. Divers at these depths have to breathe a special gas that prevents their lungs from, exploding. Like literally. But like we learned in my cave deaths video, the transition back to normal air pressure has to be slow. When you're diving, you have to ascend slowly, or you'll get what's known as the bends. It's basically your blood boiling up with nitrogen and, well, killing you. Delightful, wouldn't you agree? But as awful as that sounds, it's not even what killed these men. Wait. Before we get into that, how do you even handle this problem? With the thing that's called saturation diving, which, blah, 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 is what you're probably thinking, when do they explode? Okay, calm down, Jeffrey Dahmer, we're getting there. So basically, they chill in these chambers, do their dives, and when they're done with the job, they slowly, like really slowly, sit in the chamber while it depressurizes to normal over several days. Now, here's where it gets messy. On November 5th, 1983, a team of divers on the Byford Dolphin were finishing up a super long dive. The divers were Edwin Arthur Coward, Roy P. Lucas, Bjorn Giver Bergerson, and Truls Halevik. They were assisted by 2 dive tenders, William Cramond and Martin Saunders. It's cold, wet, and the boys are tired after a long day of whatever it is that humans need to be doing at the most inhospitable place aside from space. They set their gear down, and let out a sigh. I can't wait to go back home and see my mommy. Great, Jimmy, you jinxed us. 4 divers. 2 were near the diving bell, and 2 were in the decompression chamber safely tucked away. And then there were 2 tenders. Nobody, not the chicken kind. Basically, guys on the outside who helped operate the system. Everything was going according to plan. It's a normal day at the office under 9 atmospheres of pressure. Like, no big deal. But wait for it, because this is where things took a massive turn. The chicken tenders? Great, now you got me thinking of chicken tenders. I blame you, Boxhead. The guys were on the outside of the chambers who were supposed to follow this very specific procedure for opening and closing the decompression door, either messed up or rushed it. Unfortunately though, this wasn't one of those oopsie daisies, I dropped my phone in the toilet type of moments. This was one of those I might have just killed a bunch of people type of mistakes. Now imagine for a second, you're in a chamber pressurized to the equivalent of about 9 times the atmospheric pressure. That's a lot, by the way. Okay, wait, think of it as having an elephant sitting on your chest, but you're weirdly okay with it because you've got all the right gear on. Or you're just kinky like that, I don't know. But suddenly, the seal that's keeping this intense pressure in place breaks open. Yeah, you heard me correctly, it breaks open, and that's when all hell breaks loose, shoddy. In literally 1/10 of a second, the pressure inside the chamber drops to normal atmospheric pressure. Now, if you're a little bit of a slower box and you're not really getting the gravity of the situation, let me break it down. Imagine you're holding a soda can, or for the weirdos, you're holding a pop can, right? You decide to shake it, you open it, and the pressure inside escapes all at once. Except this time, the soda can or pop can is a human body. And instead of fizzy liquid, it's blood, organs, and bones. Yeah. The 3 out of the 4 divers in the decompression chambers were instantly killed. I mean, seriously, their internal organs burst and their bones literally shattered. The rapid decompression caused their bodies to basically explode from the goddamn inside. Now, this next part, I mean, if you've got a weak stomach, maybe take a deep breath, subscribe to Boxhead because it's about to get crazy. One of the divers that died, his name was Truls Hellevik, and he was actually the closest to the open hatch when the accident happened. His body was sucked through a hole less than 2 feet wide. Yeah, you heard me right, a hole 2 feet wide. His remains scattered everywhere. This was like a human blender situation. Reports even say that Hellevik's body was so badly damaged, his spine was ejected from his body. Did you just hear me? His spine out of his body. And what about the 2 guys who weren't in the diving bell? Well, the dive tenders were struck when the diving bell violently flew out of place when the pressure dropped so suddenly. Martin Saunders and William Cramen were both hit hard. The rescue crew rushed into the scene and found both Cramen and Saunders alive and got them both out from under the bell. Unfortunately, the injuries caused by being hit by a 4-ton device are not minor, and Cramen died later, but Saunders, who was found with his body still partially under the 4 tons of steel, suffered a broken neck, back, and collapsed lungs. But he actually did survive the event, if you can even believe that. Now you're probably wondering what caused this. Well, here's the thing. The design of the Byford Dolphin's diving system had a critical flaw. The hatch that was supposed to keep the pressure stable could be opened even if the chambers were still pressurized. It's like building a door with a handle on both sides and being like, what's the worst that can happen? Well, as we now know, the worst that could happen is instant, brutal death. Great. The investigation that followed pointed fingers at both human error and design failure. Turns out, the guy operating the system that day might have been a little bit too eager, or maybe just didn't realize how sensitive this whole thing was. It wasn't exactly clear, but yes, that one simple action costed the lives of 5 goddamn people. Alright, so now we're diving into... I just realized that sounded bad. Into one of the most wacky and stupid modern deep-sea disasters. One that you totally saw all of the memes for. Remember the Logitech controller? And we're talking about OceanGate's Titan. If you never heard of it, how's the rock you're living under, buddy? Well, a lot of people think that these rich people deserve to die horribly, and I can't say anyone deserves this, but buckle up because this story right here is like an underfunded sci-fi horror film. Now, let me give you guys some context. OceanGate is a private company, and they're the ones behind this whole mess. They had one goal: steal the money from rich people with a hole in their pocket. It was really to offer the rich people the chance to dive all the way down to the wreckage of the Titanic. Yeah, because apparently paying $250,000 per ticket to go look at an old boat that's over 12,000 feet below the ocean is like the ultimate flex or something. I mean, I think being subscribed to Boxhead's a bigger one, but whatever. So here's the deal. OceanGate had this shiny, high-tech sub called the Titan. Or at least they wanted you to think that it was high-tech. In reality, it was a bit more DIY than you'd expect for something going 2.5 miles beneath the ocean. I mean, these guys were using trash equipment, including a literal video game controller to steer the whole damn thing. Yeah, you heard me correctly. Look at this. Because when you're spending $250,000 to visit one of the deepest parts of the ocean, nothing says confidence like knowing your life depends on a piece of shit you could probably buy at Best Buy. Now, OceanGate had been doing these Titanic dives for a while, but it wasn't exactly smooth sailing. There were rumors in the diving community that maybe, just maybe, this sub wasn't as safe as it should be. Specifically, some experts raised concerns about the Titan's carbon fiber hull, a material that's not exactly known for holding up under extreme pressure. But of course, the company just brushed these concerns aside. I mean, why listen to the experts when you've got a money printer to run? Right? Fast forward to June 2023, OceanGate sets out with 5 people on board the Titan. Shahzada Dawood, a Pakistani-British businessman. Suleiman Dawood, Shahzada's 19-year-old son. Hamish Harding, a British billionaire and explorer. Paul-Henri Nargeolet, a renowned French deep-sea explorer and Titanic expert. And who could have forgot the man of the hour, Stockton Rush, the CEO of OceanGate himself. Yeah, that's right, the guy in charge of this whole operation. He was taking a joyride on his own sub. Bold move, am I right? Anyways, the Titan starts its descent all the way down to the Titanic wreck site. Everything seems fine at first. I mean, they're about an hour and 45 minutes into the dive when, boom, communication with the surface just stops. Hey guys, don't you just love being rich?
It's pretty great.
Radio silence. Now, if you're thinking, oh, maybe their radio actually just broke. First, that's some wishful thinking, but what actually happened, it was way worse. So the sub is about 2.5 miles underwater, facing over 6,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. That's like having the weight of an airplane pressing on every square inch of your goddamn body. If even the tiniest part of the sub's hull fails, the whole thing collapses in on itself faster than you can even blink. And when I say faster than you can blink, I mean literally. The sub started making strange noises, which is obviously not a great sign. Then suddenly, crack! The sub imploded from tiny but catastrophic flaws in the design of the sub. In milliseconds, with the force so powerful, it turned the entire thing into a pile of debris in a blink of an eye, killing everyone on board instantly. Yeah, it's horrifying to think about. 1 second, the people inside are staring into the deep abyss, probably thinking, how cool it would be to brag about their dive, and next, they're just gone. The pressure down there doesn't mess around, it's a total, instant destruction. So now we got a missing sub, no communication, and no clear idea of what went wrong. At least not right away. The search begins. I mean, it's not exactly easy to find something that small in the vast dark ocean floor, and the clock is goddamn ticking. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. People were glued to the news, all acting differently. Some hoping for a miracle, some memeing on the company, and some making fun of the victims. 4 days into the search, debris is finally found near the Titanic wreck. And when I say debris, I'm talking about small pieces of what was once the Titan sub. Okay, so while I'm recording this, I'm looking on Twitter, or X for the weirdos that call it that. There's actually new footage of what was found. Here, take a look at this. Yeah, you've probably been wondering, was there any chance of survival? Let's just say, not a chance in goddamn hell. Now, here's where things get even more frustrating. Remember those concerns that experts had about the Titan's design? Yeah, it turns out that they were 100% right. There were warnings from former employees, industry professionals, and engineers who had all said the same thing. The Titan was not fit for these type of deep dives. But OceanGate, and particularly its CEO, Stockton Rush, just brushed it all off. Rush even went on record saying that regulations and safety standards were holding back innovation. That's right, he thought that being safe was too restrictive. All right. Do you want to know something crazy? An OceanGate whistleblower, David Lockridge, the OceanGate's ex-director of marine operations, even said, and I quote, "The whole idea behind the company was to make money and that's it." Now, hold on. You're probably thinking, how the hell do I know if I'm getting the full picture and David actually said this about OceanGate? Because come on, we all know some news articles from some companies CNN can lie and manipulate the truth or simply leave out really important information about what is really going on in the world to serve their, own agenda. Which is why, ladies and boxheads, I always think that you should be cross-checking the information you read with other sources just to make sure it's not a whole lot of baloney. Luckily for you, dummy, I made it very easy for you with today's sponsor, Ground News, which I actually use to make these videos itself. Basically, they're an app and website that gathers related news articles from around the world to create super comprehensive story overviews. Like this one on David Lockridge testifying, claiming the company sent him a threatening letter after he complained to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And get this summary is based on all the articles Ground News found covering the story. And hold on, I personally think this part is cool. You can dive deeper and compare the coverage with context on each source's political lean, credibility, and who actually owns them. You ain't getting me this time, CNN. This is all really important to know so we can see what type of agendas are influencing their reporting. I know I've been dogging on CNN, but they are not. gonna like this one. Because unlike them, Ground News isn't telling you what to think. They're showing you all the information so you can fully understand what's happening and make up your own mind about it. Remember people, think outside the box. Anyways, to top it all off, Ground News is independent, nonpartisan, and does not use any ads on their platform, so they stay as objective as possible. So if you would like to join a platform working to make the media landscape more transparent, then head over to groundnews.com/box and save 40% on the same unlimited access Vantage plan that I use. Remember guys, stay informed, stay critical, and stay grounded. Thanks to our beautiful sponsor, Ground News. I love you guys. I mean, think about it for a second. You're designing a sub to go down one of the most dangerous places on Earth, and you're choosing to cut corners because you think that safety's overrated? Bold strategy, but let's just see how that plays out. Oh wait, we already did. So after the wreckage was found, the investigation began. People were goddamn livid. Lawsuits were flying left and right, families were devastated, and the media went into override, dissecting every decision OceanGate had ever made. There were even theories that the OceanGate sub failure was used as a way to divert public attention from other more important things. But it's just more likely that the masses attached to these type of stories more than political mumbo jumbo. The biggest takeaway is that this wasn't some unforeseeable freak accident. It was a tragedy that could have been avoided if, they just followed some basic engineering safety protocols. I keep saying sounds messed up, right? Well, that's because it actually goddamn was. Next up, we have 5 dudes who got stuck in a tube and the company didn't even try to save them. And we're talking about the Peria Fuel Trading Company diving tragedy. It's February 25th, 2022, around 3 p.m. And 5 experienced divers are about to carry out what was supposed to be a standard repair on an oil pipeline. The pipeline ran between what was called Berth 6 and Berth 5, transporting, of course, the oil. Well, it was supposed to be dormant, meaning it was not running at the moment. Only this time, what no one bothered to tell the divers was that nearly a month earlier, Peria Fuel Trading had cleared oil from the pipe, creating a differential pressure situation. What's that, you may ask? Oh, it's just a fancy way of saying they turned the pipeline into a giant ocean vacuum from goddamn hell, ready to suck anything that got close. So the divers approached their target. They get out their tools and start wrenching. Bubbles start coming up. That's not supposed to. Suddenly, a massive vortex comes up from the pipe. And hold on, we're not talking about a gentle tug, like getting pulled into a wave. This was more like getting yanked into a goddamn black hole. And now, the divers are trapped in an oil pipe. The GoPro footage was recovered from Kazim Ali Jr., one of the divers. The audio recording is just the last thing anyone would want to hear. Gasping, praying. 5 men, alive, stuck in the pipe, deep underwater, unable to move, walls on all sides, comforting each other as they realize their chances of survival are slipping away with each passing moment. It's literally haunting. Out of the 5 divers, only one, Christopher Boudreau, managed to escape, and it wasn't some miraculous fluke either. This guy literally crawled his way out of the pipeline for 3 hours just so he could survive. Christopher managed to escape by relying on his diving skills and mental determination, people. After, again, being trapped for literally 3 hours, he found a way to climb out of the pipeline by following the air pockets that had formed inside. He couldn't see and had to use air pockets to climb. It's really just insane to think about. You have to be strong, mentally strong to survive this. I make a decision to save my life. I did everything in my power, is what he said to the commission investigating the incident. Anyways, using his last reserves of strength, he slowly navigated through the confined, dark space. Eventually, with little energy left, he surfaced, and to his relief, a rescue team picked him up. Unfortunately, despite his efforts, the other divers, including Kazim Ali Jr., were not able to escape and tragically died inside the pipeline. 3 hours of pure nightmare fuel. And here, I'm getting frustrated when my Wi-Fi cuts out for a few minutes. But yeah, hold on. It gets worse. Turns out, Peria didn't just mess up with the whole pressure situation. Oh, no. When the diving community was ready to launch a rescue mission for these guys, Peria straight up refused. Yup, ladies and boxheads, they blocked rescue attempts, saying that they had no legal responsibility to save these men. I mean, what kind of company just throws its hands in the air and says, "No, not our problem?" Well, apparently everyone, Peria does. Peria was grossly negligent. Oh, and by the way, when Peria's terminal operations manager, Colin Piper, was asked why they didn't let anyone rescue the trapped divers, he said it was to prevent more deaths. Quick question here, is that really the best you could have came up with? I mean, come on. The report found that he wasted precious time waiting for a camera drone to show images from inside the pipe. Meanwhile, his men were down there, trapped in air pockets, running out of oxygen. Now imagine that. You're stuck inside an oil pipeline, praying that someone's going to save you, but the guy in charge is waiting for a camera to tell him what he already knows. And instead of consulting the best commercial divers on site, he just does nothing, making the only survivor say this to himself.
Everything inside me was hoping a rescue was going on. Nobody was making an attempt to rescue me.
Boudram, the lone survivor, hasn't been able to return to diving since the accident, and honestly, can you really blame him? The trauma of watching his colleagues die and barely escaping himself would make anyone rethink their career choice. But the real kicker, he's doubtful that Peria will ever even face real justice. And let's just say, after seeing how things played out, he might not be wrong. The Sewol Ferry Accident. It's April 16th, 2014. The Sewol Ferry is cruising from Incheon to Jeju Island in South Korea. It's quite a popular route, a bit like hopping on a Greyhound bus, except over the ocean. On board are over 450 passengers. Most of them are high school students heading out on what should have been a fun field trip. Yeah, I know. Nothing sets the scene for a tragic disaster like a bunch of kids just trying to enjoy their day. The weather's fine, the sea's calm, and everything seems normal. But underneath the surface, things were already going wrong. You see, the Sewol wasn't exactly the safest ship to begin with. It had been modified to carry more cargo than it was actually designed for. Over 2 times as much, which made it dangerously top-heavy. Now, you would think that someone would have caught on to that, right? But no, because profits, as it usually goes, were more important than passenger safety. So, at around 8:49 a.m., the ferry starts to tilt. And I'm not talking about a gentle sway in the ocean breeze. I'm talking about a sharp turn that throws the whole ship off balance. The cargo wasn't properly secured. And as it tilted, the ferry began to capsize, which means tip over. Yeah, not exactly what you want to hear when you're trapped in a floating death trap. Many 911 calls went out, and obviously they were speaking Korean. But the translations were heartbreaking. Children barely starting their lives shouting, "Save us, we're on the ferry and I think it's sinking. The ferry is tilted and we can't move." Now you've probably been wondering, so where's the crew in all this? Surely they had a plan. Well, let's just say not exactly. In fact, the crew's response to this crisis is where things go from bad to utterly infuriating. First off, the captain Lee Jun-so wasn't even in the wheelhouse when the ship started to sink. He was in his cabin, leaving an unexperienced third mate in charge. Isn't the captain's one job to drive the goddamn boat? Oh, I forgot to mention the captain was one of the first people to abandon the ship. Yeah, you heard me right. He threw on his civilian clothes, disguised himself as a passenger, and jumped ship, leaving hundreds of people behind. Talk about leading by example. Idiot. And if that wasn't bad enough, the crew actually told the passengers to stay put. They instructed everyone to remain calm in their cabins, assuring them that everything would be fine. I mean, stay in your rooms as the boat is literally tipping over. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Some passengers obviously ignored them and were rescued. Good for them. Sometimes the experts do not need to be trusted. I'm kidding, don't make this political. By the time passengers realized the severity of the situation, it was too late. The ferry was already sinking fast. So while the captain and most of the crew were already safely aboard rescue boats, hundreds of passengers were still trapped inside the sinking ferry. And these weren't just any passengers. Most of them were teenagers who were following orders, sitting tight in their rooms as water flooded the ship. Like, come on, imagine that you're a kid on a field trip, sitting in a cabin with your friends, listening to the crew, thinking that help is coming. But instead, the ship is sinking, the water's rising, and no one is coming to save you. Now, the rescue operation, well, that was another disaster. It took the South Korean Coast Guard way too damn long to respond. And when they did arrive, their efforts were uncoordinated and ineffective. I mean, this is what the ship looked like. There were helicopters, boats, divers, all things you would expect in a rescue, but it was a chaotic mess. No one was communicating where to be and what to do. Meanwhile, the passengers are trapped inside, slowly drowning while their lives could have been saved if the response had been quicker and more coordinated. And Bach says it gets worse. Out of the 476 people on board, 304 lost their lives. Of those, 250 were high school students. Oh, let that sink in. An entire generation of kids wiped out because of greed, incompetence, and a total failure of leadership. As you would expect, the public was outraged, and rightfully so. The South Korean government came under fire for their mishandling of the rescue efforts and the corruption that allowed the Sewol to operate in such a dangerous condition in the first place. The captain and several crew members were put on trial. Captain Lee Jun-so, he was sentenced to life in prison for murder through gross negligence. Yeah, sounds like the least they could do for a guy who abandoned a ship and let hundreds of people die. The rest of the crew faced various sentences, but honestly, the damage was already done.